What are little girls made of? Sugar, spice, and everything nice? And what are little boys made of? Frogs, snails, and puppy dog tails? If that's the case, what are trans girls and trans boys made of? I don't know.
いつだって君のその心はいつることなくそこにいるんでしょう
Wandering Sun is a 2011 slice-of-life drama anime based on the 2002 to 2013 manga of the same name written by Takako Shiomura, a woman who's made a lot of great queer manga like Sweet Blue Flowers and the currently being worked on Even Though We're Adults. The anime adaptation was created by AIC Classics. It was written by Mari Okada, who is pretty well known for writing anime like Toradora, Onohana, the Lupin the Third series, The Woman Called Fujiko Maine, Kisa Naver, and O Maidens in Your Seventh Season. It was also directed by Ai Okai, who is known for directing other anime like Adanoa.0, Recreators, and ID Invaded.
The story depicts a young student named Suichi Nitori, described by the author as a boy who wants to be a girl, and Nitori's friend Yushino Tatatsuki, described as a girl who wants to be a boy. As the two of them grow up, they worry about the bodily changes they will be going through, and try to find their own way of life.
For the purposes of this review, I will be describing trans girl characters like Nitori and Makoto with she-her pronouns, and trans boy characters like Tatatsuki with he-him pronouns. I should also mention that the anime adapts volumes 5 through 10 of the original manga, being the second third of a 3-part story. As such, I will be talking about spoilers of the first 4 volumes as they connect to the anime series, but not the volumes of 11 and beyond. As well as that, I will be putting up a spoiler warning for the anime in this review, as there are a couple of specific things that I want to talk about. So let's go in and see why Wandering Sun is my personal favorite queer piece in anime. To start off with a minor positive is the simplistic but effective animation and music.
The animation uses a sort of watercolor animation. Not so much with the characters themselves, though they are all cute designs with individual attributes to make them distinct and unique. It's more of the backgrounds and everything around the characters that have a watercolor style to it. There's also the case that, either in flashback or certain emotional scenes, the animation has a sort of white framing around the entire screen. This animation style is very simple at first glance, but it's actually a little smart when you think about it. Wandering Sun is all about its harsh and realistic look at its young characters, but through things like the voiceover narration from certain characters, the anime is also presented like someone is looking back on these memories. Memories of childhood, of a more simpler time. Time when things were more innocent, and though it was hard determining who you really were, at least you had these nice friends to help you along the way. The anime is extremely sentimental to every single one of its characters, even to these bullies. No matter what, the anime always feels for its characters, saying that there's nothing wrong with the things that they feel throughout its 12 episodes. This is also helped by a very calm and soothing soundtrack, using mostly simple piano and violin tracks. But given the simple animation and calming voice acting, it really helps the anime set its mood and tone, that of childhood innocence as you're trying to figure out who you are in the world, and the feelings you'll have when you look back at these memories of youth when you're older.
Next up, I want to talk about some of the important and interesting characters of the anime and the specific things that make them tick. So once again, spoilers.
Our one of 2 main characters is Nitori, who's always wanted to dress up as a girl since she was young, only realizing that as she got older, she wanted to be a girl. As Nitori grows up, puberty becomes an issue of great concern, like body hair, a deeper voice, and pimples forming on her face. She likes writing stories, particularly those about boys becoming girls and girls becoming boys. A surprise to literally everyone, she begins a romantic relationship with semi-popular model Anna. And it's interesting to see Anna's reactions towards Nitori as she becomes more and more aware that the boyfriend that she thinks she's dating is actually a girlfriend. Another great moment of visual storytelling, and even audio storytelling, is the gradual growth of Nitori's height and the deepening of her voice as the anime goes on, resulting in her becoming taller than her sister and developing an Adam's apple. Our other main character is Tatatsuki, who's always acted tough and masculine due to his height advantage, only realizing that as he gets older, that he wants to be a boy. Like Nitori, Tatatsuki becomes scared of his upcoming puberty, but to the opposite effect of Nitori, like the beginning of menstruation or the growth of breasts. There's a great and unique scene where Yuki tells Tatatsuki about binders that are used to flatten one's chest. this helping Tatatsuki's hatred of his need to wear a bra as his breasts develop. One great contemplation that Tatatsuki goes through throughout the anime is deciding whether or not to wear a male uniform to school. They don't want to draw attention to themselves, and they don't want people to think that they're just copying Chizuru. Nitori and Tatatsuki have a group of friends that help them get by. Chiba is the most outstandish of the group, her taking a romantic interest in Nitori, making her come at odds with Tatatsuki, who Nitori recently confessed feelings for. It's complicated. Chiba is the person who encourages Nitori's dressing and acting more femininely, though this is all for more selfish means, so that Nitori can remain special, just the way that Chiba likes her. Chiba is very blunt and doesn't get along with most people aside from characters like Sasha. Because of this, in another unique moment, Chiba converts to Christianity partly in a need to seek forgiveness for her previous actions, though she only attends mass when feeling guilty about her behavior. Makoto is Nitori's best friend due to their shared experiences of being trans girls. Due to her facial freckles and round glasses, Makoto is not seen as cute and girly like Nitori, even when wearing feminine clothes. This struggle being heightened when Makoto is chosen to play Juliet in the class's gender bender play. Makoto is unusually mature for her age and is able to think calmly and objectively when providing advice to friends. Makoto is also a bit of a romantic and wants to be in a relationship with a cool adult man, like her teacher in her second year of middle school. There's also Chizuru, who is my wonderful crazy-ass daughter, who surprises Nitori and Tatatsuki by showing up to her first day of middle school in the male uniform. And unlike Nitori, Tatatsuki, and Makoto, Chizuru only cross-dresses for fun. Chizuru is someone who's gone through puberty earlier than her female classmates, and because of her confident and childish personality, can make people get annoyed by her impulsive behavior, like when she wears a bikini to gym class at the pool instead of the school-regulated swimsuit. Because of her on and off again cross-dressing, Chizuru becomes elated and fascinated with Nitori when she learns that she dresses up in female clothing. And despite people like Chiba absolutely hating her, Chizuru wishes to become friends with everyone and wants everyone to just have a fun time. There's also other characters that help to round out the cast, like Maho, Nitori's older sister by 1 year. She's a big fan of teen fashion model Maiko, Maho becoming a popular model herself to eventually meet Maiko. As this happens, Maho becomes more confident in herself and starts to date her classmate Seiya. In contrast to Nitori, Maho is outspoken and is rough with her younger sister, even being physically abusive to her at times. She especially does not like it when Nitori dresses in her clothing, calling her own younger sibling disgusting and perverted. The complex thing here is that Maho hates that Nitori looks cuter than her when dressed in female clothing, even causing Seiya to crush on Nitori at first. Another character is Anna, who is good friends with Maiko and as such becomes friends with Maho. While Anna first disapproves of Nitori dressing as a girl, even calling her a freak, Anna starts to fall for Nitori and her kindness. The two going out after Nitori confessed her feelings for Anna. Anna's opinion of Nitori presenting as a girl often changes, eventually saying that it actually suits Nitori, and the two even go out together on a date with Nitori dressed as a girl. But when Nitori goes to school dressed as a girl and starts to say that she is one, Anna becomes confused about her feelings towards Nitori now that this hobby has become something serious. My favorite character in Wandering Sun is Yuki, a tall and attractive trans woman who lives with her boyfriend Shina. She eventually meets Nitori and Tatatsuki, learns that they are also transgender, and becomes a sort of mentor to the both of them, giving them helpful advice with their transgender troubles.
This is actually one of my favorite tropes, especially in queer media, and that is of an older queer character giving the younger queer character guidance. This can be seen in other queer manga and anime like Bloom Into You, Sweet Blue Flowers, and Our Dreams at Dusk.
Despite the differences between their situations, Yuki sees a lot of herself in Nitori when they were growing up. This leads into my absolute favorite part of the anime, where a third of episode 11 is dedicated to telling us about Yuki's backstory and how she started to date Shina. Yuki was often bullied as a kid and was forced to wear her school's female uniform and confess to a boy she didn't even like. This causing Yuki to stop going to school entirely due to the massive bullying and humiliation. Shina was the only person who stood up for Yuki when they were younger, causing Yuki to fall for him. Yuki eventually transitioned into the woman she is today and runs a gay bar, where she eventually ran into Shina and the two started a date. This origin story for Yuki is just great. It's a tragic story about how constant bullying at school and neglectfulness at home can cause a young transgender person to really deteriorate inside. But it's also kind of sweet that the one person who stood up for Yuki at school eventually became her boyfriend. Despite her troubled past, Yuki is happy with her life, being friends with Nitori and Tatatsuki and dating a man who will protect her and love her forever.
Now, the biggest appeal of Wandering Sun is that it has transgender characters and transgender experiences as the center point of the anime. It is, for the first time, to my knowledge, that one or more transgender characters' stories is the center point of an anime. Surprisingly, there's a lot of anime that have transgender characters. Here's a bunch of them that I've seen. Mayuki from Yu Yu Hakusho, Saiko from Lovely Complex, Grail from Back Butler, Isabella from Paradise Kiss, Ruka from Steins Gate, Alika from Hunter x Hunter, Tiger from My Hero Academia, and Lily from Zombieland Saga, just to name a couple. And if we're talking about Japanese animated movies, there's also my fucking wife Hana from Tokyo Godfathers. But the thing that Wandering Sun and its characters have against all those other anime and their characters is that these anime don't center specifically around the transgender characters in their stories. Sure, some get side stories that talk about their life as a transgender individual, like with Paradise Kiss and Zombieland Saga, and they are good stories and treat these transgender characters with lots of respect. But again, Wandering Sun is 100% all about its transgender characters.
Sure, we get other stories like Chiba getting along with other people, or Maho and Seiya's relationship, but for the first time, these are their side stories in the anime. The cisgender characters and their stories become the secondary plots. The premise and majority of runtime is given to telling us the stories of our two main transgender leads, Nitori and Tatsuki. Makoto is also given a lot of screen time about her transgender troubles, and since Yuki has already gone through her story and character arcs, she's here to help our trans kids while also allowing us to see some of her story in episode 11.
Look, I know I'm reiterating the same point, but it's something that I want to make very clear as something new, unique in terms of storytelling. Transgender characters have always been in stories as either side characters or what have you. Hell, if you're lucky, maybe we get some look into their lives as a transgender individual.
But Wandering Sun is the first time, as much as I can tell in terms of anime, where a transgender character is the main character of the story and said story is all about them being transgender. It doesn't happen that often, if at all, and that's what makes Wandering Sun unique and special.
And the great thing about the anime is that with its 4 transgender characters, all of their thoughts and experiences, the things that give them trouble and the things that make them happy, are all different. Nitori's transgender experience is different from Tatsuki's transgender experiences, which is different from Makoto's transgender experience, which is different from Yuki's transgender experience. What's so super special awesome about this? Well, it's quite simple. It shows us that just like the snowflakes that fall in the winter and the fingerprints on every human being, each transgender experience is different in some way.
Some might have similar qualities and experiences, some might think the same way about said experiences, but no two transgender experiences are 100% the same, just like no human's life is 100% the same. As transgender people, we have our own wants and needs, desires to do things that make us happy as individual people.
By having 4 transgender characters with their different and individual stories, the anime teaches the audience that a transgender experience is not just one thing, but a spectrum of different lives that are lived, both the good and the bad. Jumping onto that, as a transgender lesbian myself, Nitori is the character that has the same gender identity and sexual orientation as me. But once again, we have some different wants, needs, and desires, likes and dislikes. But to tell you about the realistic storytelling of these transgender characters and how relatable they are to transgender individuals, I'm going to talk about 10 things, in no particular order, that I shared in common with Nitori when I was in middle school and high school. This is the most personal I'm going to get on this channel, folks, so pay attention.
Being impressed at girls who dressed in more masculine clothing.
People look at girls dressing as boys and think they're cool. People look at boys dressing as girls and think they're gross.
Dressing up in my older sister's clothing.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to apologize for that again, sis.
Being made fun of for being uncomfortable changing in front of boys.
Male locker rooms were the stuff of nightmares.
Being confused about girls who were older than me.
I didn't know if I wanted to date them or if I wanted to be them.
Growing pimples on my face.
And let me tell you, it was a mess.
People in middle school making fun of my more feminine expression.
Like certain ways that I would move my hands while walking or crossing my legs while sitting.
Imagining my life if I was born biologically female.
And what wonderful dreams they were.
Wanting to go to school dressed as a girl.
And while I always chickened out, Nitori actually did it. More on that later.
The moment when I discovered that I had grown taller than my older sister.
And how utterly heartbroken I was, though I'd never let anyone see it.
And when my Adam's apple began to develop as my voice started to really deepen.
The Adam's apple, the worst part of the human body that I cannot change whatsoever. The first pretty good though.
But again, the great thing about Wandering Sun is that the actions of the other characters can be relatable for other transgender individuals. I'm sure that some transgender men can relate to Tatsuki and growing breasts, being forced to wear a bra, and having their first period. Or other transgender women can relate to Makoto and not feeling feminine in terms of appearance and being jealous of cute boys who can easily look like girls. And I'm sure there are other transgender women who can relate to Yuki's experience of being heavily bullied for being transgender specifically.
Each transgender person has had their own experiences as both good and bad, and they should each be listened to and respected, because the more that people are aware of the stories of people that are different from them and actually understand them, can the world finally be truly equal.
Arguably, the most important moment of the anime is when, at the end of episode 9, due to Chizuru continuing to do stuff like wearing the male uniform or just a tie to school, and to Tatsuki following suit, Nitori decides to arrive at school one day dressed as a girl, not pretending to be anyone else, but instead a girl named Suichi Nitori. Nothing more and nothing less. This moment is built up for multiple episodes and has lasting effects for the rest of the anime, and later in the manga. The biggest consequence is everyone knowing that Nitori dressing as a girl isn't like a weird hobby or something. They know now that Nitori identifies and wants to be a girl.
With this, I want to talk about a concept in terms of writing that I don't think most people talk about, and that is that when a writer has a character in their story that is transgender and isn't out yet to the rest of the characters. So there's two options that they might have when they want this character's transgender identity to be revealed to the rest of the characters. One option is outing your own character by having someone else discover them being transgender accidentally and revealing it to everyone else without the transgender character's consent. Well, this kind of storytelling is fine, and to be fair, I've used it before in my own writing. It's not really fair to the transgender character. I know that may sound weird since characters aren't real, but it's more in how it relates to real-world consequences of transgender individuals being outed and how that has the possibility to scar them for life, and in the worst circumstances can lead to their death. Again, it's fine if that's the way you want your story to go, depending of course on what happens after the reveal, but Wandering Sun does something that's a bit smarter than the first option. Option 2 is allowing the characters themselves to come out.
Like Nitori choosing for herself and only herself to dress up as a girl and go to school, no matter what the consequences may be. This gives the transgender character more agency in their own story. It gives them the freedom to determine when they themselves want to come out of the closet. While of course the way that Nitori did that was probably not the smartest thing to do, it was still her choice. Nobody forced this on her. This is actually contrasted in the anime with Yuki's backstory that she tells Nitori, like I mentioned before, i.e. Yuki was forced to come out as a transgender woman against her will, while Nitori chose to come out as a transgender woman of her own free will.
It's a writing concept that most people don't talk about, and as more stories centered around transgender characters are created in the future, I hope that writers, both cisgender and transgender, will take this concept into careful consideration. Speaking of the end of episode 9, I want to go over and talk about most of the characters' realistic reactions of Nitori coming to school dressed as a girl. I want to do this because all these reactions are different and interesting, always depending on the character and how they are connected to Nitori.
Tatsuki feels a bit guilty, feeling that it's because of him going to school dressed as a boy that Nitori came to school dressed as a girl, but upset at himself for not saying to the teachers that he's actually a boy, like Nitori did saying she's a girl. Makoto realizes she's always been jealous of Nitori's more feminine appearance. Nitori could dress up as a girl and a stranger would be none the wiser. Chizuru isn't mean to Nitori for doing this, but wants to make it clear that her wearing the male uniform and a tie doesn't mean that she's the same as Nitori. Maho doesn't go to school for a while for two reasons. One is because she feels humiliated and doesn't want to go to school out of embarrassment. The second reason is that she doesn't want to witness people being mean and bullying her younger sibling. Nitori's mother is utterly confused by this event and can't understand it. Nitori's father is also confused but accepts his child as someone different than he originally thought. But that not being a bad thing, loving his child no matter what. Yuki is completely taken aback that Nitori would do something like that, based on her own backstory. But most interestingly, in my opinion, Nitori's girlfriend, Anna, having no idea what to think about the situation. She doesn't hate Nitori or thinks she's weird or disgusting now, but she thought that Nitori liking to dress like a girl and the two going on dates with him dressed as such was just for fun. But Nitori going to school dressed as a girl made the situation feel more real to her. She thought she had a boyfriend, but now knowing the truth about Nitori, does that mean she has a girlfriend instead? And what does that say about her? Does that mean she's a lesbian now? Bisexual? Pansexual? Fuck if she knows. And that scares her a little bit. This eventually causing Anna to break up with Nitori, but the two of them end on good terms by the end of the anime.
The reason I wanted to talk about these reactions, not just because they're all really realistic, is because just like how all transgender experiences are different, the same can be said for people's reactions to transgender individuals. And these reactions also need to be learned about and understood. There's one last thing that I want to talk about in this section, because I honestly couldn't fit it anywhere else.
There's a segment in episode 1 where Nitori goes around the city dressed as a girl. They accidentally bump into a man man and apologize, the man none the wiser. When Nitiri stands up straight after bowing, she notices that her wig is off-center, so she casually tugs it to make it center again. There's something so simple and yet so real and deep in this single action. To the outside world right now, due to Nitiri's high voice and feminine features, no one knows that Nitiri was born biologically male, a thing that Nitiri wishes was a thing, for people to only see her as a girl and nothing else. But her circumstances aren't like that, and she's reminded of this with her wig almost falling off, her casually fixing it, signifying her hopelessness in the situation.
Such a powerful moment done through great visual storytelling. I fucking love this anime. Though, while I love this anime to death, I will say that even I have some problems with it, though honestly it doesn't affect my final personal score. When you love certain anime to death, even the negatives can affect your overall feelings towards them. One is that, though I praise Wandering Sun as an excellent in-depth look at transgender youth and having it as the center storytelling is pretty unique in anime, I will say that it isn't quite as in-depth when compared to modern standards. Or should I say that some keywords and language is quite outdated when you consider that not only did the anime air in 2011, but the manga was released from 2002 to 2013. And even in the 9 years that the anime ended, the way we look at transgender individuals and talk about them has changed greatly.
Like calling characters like Yuki as transsexuals, Yuki even calling herself this. Transsexual used to be the term to refer to people like this, especially between the 1950s and 1980s. One reason that the term of transsexual has been slowly rejected by the community is because the term of transsexual has the concern that it implies something to do with sexuality when it is actually about gender identity.
Again, what's presented in Wandering Sun is brilliant, but in terms of modern standards, I do think it should have done just a little more. If you're curious about other manga that features transgender experiences, also written by people on the transgender spectrum, I'd recommend Our Dreams at Dusk and the autobiographical The Bride Was a Boy. My next negative is a little complicated. Now, for some reason, a reason that I've yet to find out, the anime broadcast decided to combine both episodes 10 and 11 into one single episode, simply called episode 10 plus 11. And since the two episodes are edited into one single episode, a bunch of important and interesting stuff is cut out from both episodes. Like some great visual storytelling moments or the backstory of Yuki and Sheena and how they became a couple. My favorite fucking scene in the entire show! Now this was fixed in the anime's DVD and Blu-ray release where episodes 10 and 11 were shown in the original format. But the thing is that the only way for someone in the West to watch Wandering Sun legally, as there hasn't been a physical release of the anime here, is on Crunchyroll. Except, Crunchyroll streamed the episodes of the anime based on its original broadcast, so the only way for someone to watch the 10th and 11th episodes of Wandering Sun, at least in the West, is to watch them illegally. And since Wandering Sun is my 7th favorite anime of all time, that kinda bugs me. My last problem with Wandering Sun is something that I mentioned before, and that is that the anime is only the second third of a 3-part story, adapting volume 5 to 11, the manga not finishing till 2 years after the anime ended, eventually finishing at volume 15.
So at various times, the anime truly does feel like the middle part of a 3-part story. The beginning and end of the anime feels missing, making the anime leave a little bit to be desired. Now, to be fair, the anime's first episode does enough to catch the viewer up on events that have happened in the first 4 volumes of the manga, making sure that we know where the characters are at this point in the story. I also understand why they chose to just adapt the middle part. The beginning part of the Wandering Sun manga is a bit slow-paced and can get a little dull at times. I love it to death, but the middle part of the story is the most interesting, so I can see why at the time they would want to start when the characters are in middle school. But since the anime stops as the manga is still going on, the story feels incomplete. With just the anime itself, we really don't get a complete resolution of our characters, just the vague idea that no matter what happens to Nitiri, she'll deal with it knowing who she truly is inside.
That's all well and good, but considering some of the stuff that happens in the last third of the manga and even the first third, I wish that we could one day see a full and complete anime adaptation of the Wandering Sun manga, so that we can have a full and complete story to enjoy both in manga form and anime form. In the end, at least in my opinion, Wandering Sun is one of the best stories detailing the troubles of transgender individuals, especially with queer youth. The animation and music is simplistic and yet effective, the characters are diverse and complex, and between the 4 transgender characters in the anime, not one of their experiences is exactly the same. And it has such unique transgender storytelling that you just don't see used that often. Though it may have some drawbacks, like its little outdatedness when compared to modern standards, and it only being a third of a 3-part story, having the anime leave a little bit to be desired, Wandering Sun is my favorite overall queer anime, and it really makes me wish that there was more TV shows, both in anime or anything in America, honestly, that was all about the transgender experiences. That would definitely make me very happy. I'm going to give Wandering Sun a critical score of an A- and a personal score of an A. Words cannot describe how much I love this anime, and especially the manga that the anime is adapted from, making me really, really wish that not only would the anime get a physical release in the West, but all the manga volumes as well. A girl can only dream. Anyway, thanks for watching my review of my 7th favorite anime of all time, and tune in next time for my review of my 6th favorite anime of all time. And the experience will be quite a ruckus. Or at least the Italian word for it.